The Great Emu War. In 1932, during the height of the Great Depression, farmers in Western Australia were already struggling with failing crops and economic hardship. That year, an estimated 20,000 emus migrated inland after their breeding season, and their path led them directly through newly established wheat farms. These large, flightless birds began feeding on the crops and trampling the fields. Even worse, they tore through the fences designed to keep rabbits out, which allowed other pests to flood into the farmland. As crop losses climbed, the farmers turned to the Australian government for help. In November 1932, the government approved a military operation. Soldiers from the Royal Australian Artillery were deployed, equipped with Lewis machine guns and thousands of rounds of ammunition. The mission was clear: reduce the emu population in the affected areas. The first engagement took place near Campion, but it didn't go as planned. When the soldiers tried to ambush a large group, the birds scattered instantly, reaching speeds of up to 50 km/h. The emus proved to be incredibly difficult targets. In a second attempt, the crew mounted a machine gun onto a truck to chase the birds down. However, the rough terrain made the vehicle jump and shake so much that the gun couldn't be stabilized. The operation was proving to be ineffective. Over several weeks, thousands of bullets were fired. Official reports estimated that fewer than 1,000 emus were killed during this initial phase. A second phase began later that month. By December 1932, official records claimed nearly 10,000 emus had been killed. However, the emu population remained strong, and large-scale military involvement ended shortly after. The incident eventually became known as the Great Emu War. To this day, it remains one of the most unusual wildlife control operations in history, a rare case where a national army was deployed against wild birds to solve an agricultural crisis. Sparrow Management. In 1958, the government of China launched a nationwide campaign to reduce 4 animals considered harmful to agriculture and public health. The program became known as the 4 Pests Campaign. The targeted species were rats, flies, mosquitoes, and sparrows. At the time, sparrows were believed to consume large quantities of grain seeds from farms. Government officials concluded that reducing the sparrow population would help increase crop production. Across the country, communities organized coordinated efforts to remove sparrow nests, clear eggs, and control the birds. One of the most common methods involved forcing sparrows to remain in flight. People gathered in large groups, beating drums, banging pots, and waving flags to prevent the birds from landing. Sparrows are small birds with limited endurance. Many eventually fell from the sky due to exhaustion and perished after prolonged flight. Within a short period, sparrow populations across much of China were drastically reduced. However, the campaign soon produced an unintended ecological consequence. Sparrows did not feed only on grain. They also consumed large numbers of insects, including crop-eating locusts and other agricultural pests. With the sparrow population severely reduced, insect populations began to grow rapidly. Locust swarms expanded across several farming regions. Crops that had survived the earlier sparrow damage were now heavily consumed by insects. Agricultural production declined in many areas. By 1960, the government recognized the environmental impact of the campaign. The Sparrow Management campaign remains one of the most widely cited historical examples of how large-scale intervention in natural ecosystems can produce unexpected and damaging consequences. Horse losses. In 1914, the outbreak of World War I created an enormous demand for transport animals. Before the widespread use of military vehicles, armies relied heavily on horses for transportation, supply movement, and artillery support. Millions of horses were mobilized by the major powers fighting across Europe. Countries such as France, Germany, and United Kingdom deployed vast numbers of horses to move equipment, pull cannons, and carry soldiers. Conditions on the battlefield were extremely dangerous. Horses were exposed to artillery fire, machine guns, explosions, and poison gas. Many also suffered from exhaustion, disease, and lack of food while working long hours in harsh environments. Over the course of the war, it is estimated that around 8 million horses died during military operations. Many were killed directly in combat, while others died from injuries, illness, or overwork. After the war, military planners increasingly turned to motorized vehicles, reducing the reliance on horses in future conflicts. Denmark mink culling. In 2020, health authorities in Denmark discovered a concerning development during the global spread of COVID-19. The virus had been detected in farmed minks, animals raised in large numbers for fur production. Scientists found that the virus could spread from humans to minks and then potentially back to humans. During testing, researchers identified a mutated strain of the virus linked to mink farms. Officials worried that this mutation might weaken future vaccines being developed to control the pandemic. Denmark was one of the world's largest producers of mink fur, with more than 1,000 farms across the country. Millions of animals were kept in close quarters, creating conditions where the virus could spread quickly. In November 2020, the Danish government announced an emergency decision. Authorities ordered the culling of all farmed minks in the country to prevent further spread of the mutated virus strain. Within a short period, approximately 15 to 17 million minks were culled. The decision was controversial and sparked political debate inside Denmark. Later investigations also questioned whether the government had proper legal authority when the order was first issued. Despite the controversy, the event became one of the largest single animal disease control actions in modern history. UK farm crisis. In February 2001, a dangerous livestock disease was detected on a farm in United Kingdom. The illness was identified as foot and mouth disease, a highly contagious virus that affects cattle, sheep, pigs, and other cloven-hoofed animals. The disease spreads quickly through direct contact between animals. It can also travel through contaminated equipment, clothing, and even the air over short distances. Within days, additional infections were reported across several regions of the country. Authorities feared that the virus could devastate the agricultural industry. The government introduced strict emergency measures. Farms with infected animals were immediately quarantined. However, officials determined that containment would require more aggressive action. A nationwide culling policy was established. Livestock on infected farms were culled as a preventive measure against spread. In many cases, livestock on nearby farms were also culled as a precaution. Over the following months, more than 6 million animals, including cattle, sheep, and pigs, were killed across the United Kingdom. The outbreak had severe economic consequences. Livestock markets closed, and thousands of farms temporarily shut down. By late 2001, strict controls and mass culling eventually brought the outbreak under control. The crisis remains one of the largest animal disease emergencies in modern British history. Stray dog extermination. During the 20th century, several large cities struggled with outbreaks of rabies. Rabies is a deadly virus that spreads through bites from infected animals. In many densely populated cities, large populations of stray dogs lived on the streets. These animals often had no vaccination and could easily spread the virus between each other and to humans. Cities such as Istanbul and Bangkok faced repeated rabies scares during different periods of the 1900s. Public health officials feared that uncontrolled dog populations could trigger widespread outbreaks. To reduce the risk, authorities sometimes ordered emergency dog control campaigns. Stray dogs were captured or killed in large numbers over short periods. In some operations, tens of thousands of dogs were removed within a few weeks. Historical records from certain campaigns estimate that over 30,000 stray dogs were eliminated during single citywide operations aimed at reducing rabies transmission. These operations were often controversial. Animal welfare groups criticized the methods used, arguing that mass killing was a harsh response. Today, the events remain an example of how public health emergencies sometimes led governments to take drastic measures to control disease.